Hello and welcome back to the UiPath Integration Service video series. In this video, we'll demonstrate the step-by-step process of utilizing established connections in UiPath Studio to build a solution for the discussed use case. As a reminder, our use case involves automating and integrating various HR and IT systems, with the goal of streamlining the onboarding process for new hires. For this demo, we'll use a pre-built process and guide you through the main steps, such as how to make use of the connections from the integration service in Studio and install the necessary packages to use the correct connector activities. In the first part of the process, we'll go into detail on Microsoft OneDrive and SharePoint connections, and later we'll provide an overview of the high-level steps for enabling the other connectors used in this use case. First things first, if we want to know the actual connector or record type that triggered the process, we need to define the following input arguments. We've already created the required arguments here. Yes, we have the UiPath event, event connector, event object ID, and event object type. Basically, the event that triggered the process can be created, deleted, or updated. The event connector is the name of the connector that triggered the process. In our case, it'll be Microsoft OneDrive and SharePoint. The event object ID will be the ID of the object that triggered the process. So in our case, it'll be the ID of the file which was created in the specific location that we're monitoring to trigger the process. And the event object type will be the type of the object. So, in our case, the event object type will be a file. But before building the process, we want to make sure that the process will be triggered by integration service. So, we'll add an if condition here to check whether the process is triggered by integration service. This step is important to avoid any unauthorized access and ensure that the process is executed only by authorized users. If the connector argument is provided and this process was triggered by integration service, we'll have the name of the connector that triggered the process. We add the connector condition to enhance flexibility and adaptability. It allows us to create a process triggered by various connectors, each with unique requirements. By checking the presence of the connector argument, we can customize the process based on the specific connector used. For instance, if the SharePoint connector triggers the process, we can perform SharePoint-specific actions. Conversely, if the Salesforce connector triggers it, we can execute actions tailored to Salesforce. Thus, by examining the connector argument, we can identify the triggering connector and adjust the process accordingly. The UiPath event connector.length is used to check if the UiPath event connector has been populated with a value or not when the process was triggered. Length function returns the number of characters in a string. If the connector argument is not provided, we'll log a warning message with the details connector argument not provided. Logging in UiPath is crucial for tracking automation progress, troubleshooting, and auditing execution. By logging warning messages, we can detect issues early and take corrective actions to ensure smooth automation. Great! Inside this process, we can have multiple cases. If the process is triggered by the Microsoft OneDrive connector, we have specific workflows for that part of the process. Alternatively, we can use the same process for a Salesforce connector, for example. We can define different workflows for different cases by checking the value of the connector argument and using conditional statements to execute the appropriate workflows. This makes the process more flexible and adaptable to different scenarios. We'll monitor the event connector. We're using the switch activity with the UiPath event connector in the expression to route the process flow based on the type of connector that triggered the process. The switch activity evaluates the value of the UiPath event connector and directs the process to a specific branch based on the result. For example, if the UiPath event connector is Microsoft OneDrive, The process will follow a specific set of actions that are designed to work with OneDrive. On the other hand, if the UiPath event connector is Salesforce, the process will follow a different set of actions that are tailored to Salesforce and change the type argument to string. In this case, we want to use the UiPath event connector as the expression, which is a string type. Therefore, we need to change the type of argument. We're creating a specific case in the switch activity for when the process is triggered by the UiPath Microsoft OneDrive connector. This case will contain the steps to be executed when the OneDrive connector is used to trigger the process. In this case, we'll import the necessary OneDrive workflow and use the file ID as the input argument. By passing the file ID as an input argument, we ensure that the workflow performs actions on the correct file. Before proceeding to the OneDrive workflow, we'll add a log message in the default section with the log level set to warn. Adding a log message with a warning log level as a default case is important to keep track of unexpected situations. In case the process is triggered by a connector that was not intended to be used, the log message will indicate this and draw attention to the issue. This will allow developers to identify and address the problem quickly. As mentioned earlier, we'll also create another case where we can use this process for a Salesforce connector. For example, we can monitor when a Salesforce account is created using the switch activity and trigger this process. For this demo, we'll focus on monitoring only the OneDrive connector. Let's take a closer look at the OneDrive workflow and examine it in detail. Here, we've added various activities that are part of a use case, which makes use of other connectors besides OneDrive. However, for this demo, we'll focus specifically on the OneDrive connector and its associated activities. Later on, we'll provide a high-level overview of the other activities and connectors that were included in the full use case. So, for now, let's configure the process to work with the OneDrive connector and take a closer look at its associated activities. Okay, let's move on to the next step. We need to retrieve the file ID, which is the event object ID, using the OneDrive and SharePoint connection card. To do this, we'll navigate to the Integrations section and select Microsoft 365 Activities. Then we'll select Files and choose the OneDrive SharePoint activity. After that, we'll enable the Use the Integration Service option. Enabling the Use the Integration Service option allows UiPath to authenticate and access the OneDrive and SharePoint connection without having to explicitly provide credentials each time. This option helps to simplify the authentication process and provides a more secure way to access cloud storage services. By checking this option, the UiPath platform will handle the authentication and authorization with the specified credentials, which are stored securely and managed centrally. Once we do this, we'll see that the OneDrive connection is already set up by default. This means that we can easily retrieve the file ID using this activity without having to set up a new connection. Now that we've established the connection, as per our use case, we need to get the file from OneDrive, and for this, we'll use the getFile activity to retrieve the Excel file by providing the ID of the file, which is the event object ID, and set the output as a new file. After retrieving the file ID, we'll use the download file activity to download the file to a temporary path. We'll provide the activity with the details of the file that we want to download, including the ID of the file and the destination path. This will allow us to access the contents of the file for processing. Next, let's add a log message to indicate that the file has been downloaded, along with its location. To do this, we'll use the info log level and add the message to the log. After downloading the file, we need to read it. Let's add Read Range Workbook activity. We'll use the temporary path and file name, along with the sheet name, and set the output to a data table that's already been created. So, to recap, we've used the OneDrive connection to retrieve the Excel file using the ID sent by the integration service trigger, downloaded the file, and read the Excel file data into a data table. To perform these steps, we've utilized the Office 365 activities. Now, just a quick note, if you want to use the Office 365 activities mentioned above, you need to install the Microsoft Office 365 activity package. The next step is to create a Salesforce account using the data extracted from the Excel file. To create an account in Salesforce, we first need to check the employee data table to verify if the onboarding column is set to true. If the onboarding column in the employee data table is set to true, we'll proceed to create a new account in Salesforce using the Insert Record activity from the Salesforce Activities category within Integration Service. To find these activities, navigate to the Integration Service category in the Activities panel of UiPath Studio. Within this category, you'll find activities for various integrations, including Salesforce, Slack, and ServiceNow. Specifically to work with Salesforce, you can use activities from the Salesforce category. To access the Salesforce activities, you'll need to install them through the Manage Packages option in UiPath Studio. This can be accessed by going to the Activities panel, clicking on the Manage Packages button, and searching for the Salesforce package. Once installed, you can find the Salesforce activities under the Salesforce category in the Activities panel. There are multiple activities available for Salesforce, including the Salesforce activities created by UiPath. The first three Salesforce activities are created by UiPath. There are Salesforce activities available for utilization with the integration service, including Salesforce Classic activities and Salesforce Marketing Cloud activities. Both Salesforce activities for integration service and Salesforce Marketing Cloud activities are compatible with the integration service. We've already installed the Salesforce activity package, which requires the Automation Cloud integration service, as mentioned in the description. The second one is the Classic Activity package, which is not compatible with the Automation Cloud integration service. Therefore, we can only use the activities that are compatible with it. Similarly, we can find activity packages for ServiceNow and Slack under the Integration Service category in UiPath Studio. These packages provide a set of activities to perform various operations on their respective platforms. To use these activity packages, we need to install them through the Manage Packages option in UiPath Studio. The naming convention for these packages follows the pattern of Connector Name, Integration Service, Activities, for each of the packages for Salesforce, ServiceNow, and Slack. Once installed, we can find these activities under their respective categories in the Activities panel. For instance, if we want to use Slack activities, we would install the Slack Integration Service Activities package, and then find the activities under the Slack category in the Activities panel. Similarly, we would install the ServiceNow Integration Service Activities package to use ServiceNow activities. Moving on to the next step, once we've created the users in Salesforce, we need to add a filter for errors and store them in a separate data table. For employees for whom an account wasn't created due to an error, we use the Create New Incident activity for ServiceNow to create an incident in ServiceNow. First, we select the ServiceNow connection that we created in Integration Service. Then, we specify the caller ID, which is the person who reported the incident. Next, we set the urgency level for the incident. This is based on the severity of the issue, and we can choose from low, moderate, high, or critical. After setting the urgency, we create a short description of the incident. This should be a summary of the issue that helps to identify it easily. Finally, we specify the date and time when the incident was created. By using this activity, we can create a new incident in ServiceNow for each employee for whom an account couldn't be created due to an error, allowing us to keep track of the issues and resolve them quickly. Once the ticket is created, we use the Send Message activity for Slack to create a chat message that will be posted in a Slack channel. We use the Slack connection, specify the channel ID, and the text created in the previous step. At last, we can save and publish the process. This brings us to the end of this demo, where we've learned about the established connections and how to use the related activities in the process. In the upcoming video, we'll explore how to configure the triggers. Thank you for watching and happy automation!